this is the disturbing case of the family feud murder. Hello? What? I didn't never know there was that, but let's watch.
On a Thursday night, that is, the night of February 23rd, 2023, Rebecca Becky Bleefnick, a 41-year-old nurse and mom of three, was shot a chilling 14 times in her home in Kentucky Road, Quincy, Illinois. She had been alone in her house, and as police investigations later revealed, the intruder had broken in by climbing up onto the second story of the house and prying open the window of one of the kids' bedrooms. It's unclear what exactly transpired after the break-in, as the only certain detail, going by investigative reports, is that the attack took place in or near the bathroom, as that's where her lifeless body was found several hours later. Interestingly, nothing was stolen and nothing was destroyed, and the neighbors told authorities how they hadn't heard anything that night. Mojo, you're distracting the audience, bro. I gotta let you out. However, as detectives dug further into this trivial murder, it quickly became apparent that it was all the work of 39-year-old Tim Bleefnick, Becky's husband, who had not only gone to great lengths to conceal the crime, but also demonstrated a streak of behavior that just didn't help his case. This might also be the right point to mention that just 3 years before the murder in 2020, Tim was a contestant on Family Feud, and his comments on the show are a little bit incriminating. Now, we're gonna get to that later in the video, but I believe where we should start is the day of the murder. So we already know that Becky was alone at home, a fact which naturally raises the question, where was the husband and the kids? Well, they were all together, just at a different address, Hampshire Street in Quincy, Illinois. This was a rental property about a mile away from Becky's address. This is where Tim lived, as they were going through a messy divorce. The three boys, aged 12, 10, and 5, had all spent the night with their father, and they were spending their day at school, which was still in the Quincy location. Now let's pause there and recap, because we're going to be referencing that a lot later. So, in the middle of the night, an intruder breaks in. Becky tries to dial 911 but fails, and around 1:11 a.m., she is shot multiple times and left to die on the bathroom floor. Just a mile away, her husband Tim spends the night with their three children, who then go on to have a normal day at their school, St. Peter's School. Now, everything seemed just fine up until 3 p.m. when Becky failed to pick up the kids from school. Apparently, that had raised concerns among family members. I'm gonna guess the school went ahead and called certain family members, and upon seeing that Becky simply just wasn't picking up, her father went to go physically check up on her at her house, and sadly, that's when he discovered her body laying on the bathroom floor. He immediately called 911, and shortly after, at around 3:32 p.m., officers were at the scene. Police Chief Adam Yates said it was rare to have such a thing happen in the rather small town, adding, "The Quincy community has not experienced a crime of this magnitude since early 2019. All death is tragic. The circumstances of Miss Bleefnick's murder are incomprehensible." The first phase of the investigation was trivial to say the least. They only had a shadowy figure as their lead. Actually, the first thing they physically found were 8 9mm shell casings and a shoe print. Well, it was actually a partial shoe print that was found near the window where they broke in from. These were of course critical pieces of evidence, but they went on to canvass the larger area, and in doing so discovered the presence of surveillance cameras on a neighboring property that might have captured the break-in. And luckily, the surveillance videos did give some clues as to what went down. First, there was a camera from an immediate neighbor, the Haymans, that was pointing at both the Haymans and Becky's driveways. Or maybe better put, the Hymans had a camera pointing at their driveway, but their home ran alongside Becky's. 24 hours before the murder, at about 1:05 a.m., the camera captured something pretty weird. A person walking down the driveway toward the back of Becky's house, and about 48 minutes later, the same person walking back in the opposite direction. Interestingly, the same camera had captured a similar incident on Valentine's Day about a week earlier. It showed a person riding a bike towards Becky's house right before the murder, and again riding away from the house. It wasn't long before investigators pieced together that this was the same person, and this was mostly because every time the Hyman's residence CCTV captured the person on Becky's property, the other camera would capture the person on a bike riding down the road just a few minutes before. Now, all this was good evidence, but as I mentioned before, it was only leading to a shadowy figure on a camera. The CCTV footage was just too bad in quality to actually tell who it was. The only new detail that could help in finding the suspect, and that investigators added to their arsenal, was that the bike did not have reflectors on it. This little piece of information would later turn out to be very important. So given the evidence so far, with nothing even remotely pointing to Tim, how did the investigation end up using him as a point of interest? Well, that was thanks to Becky's sister, Sarah Riley. Apparently, as investigators spoke with her, she revealed to them that the couple had a combative history, a detail which was important enough to shift the direction of the case. It also probably helped that the bike, the one without the reflectors in its wheels, was found a few days later abandoned just a few blocks from Tim's Hampshire Street address. So armed with those two angles, the sister's testimony, and the bike's location, investigators decided to execute a search warrant on Tim's house. This was on March 1st, 2023, and it's when it became pretty clear that he was the one who killed Becky. How so? Well, how about cold hard evidence that directly linked him to the crime? We're talking about tools used in the process, search history, and even a secret burner account. In his basement, authorities
What's so crazy is like, y'all be looking up shit on the internet and thinking clearing your browsing history is going to get rid of that. There's such things as caches, cookies, and holds all that information, bro. Like, lock in, twin, for real.
had found 54 shell casings and a crowbar. Then, information downloaded from his phone and computer also proved to be damning. He, for instance, had made over 200 online searches on a specific license plate and VIN number. These were
over 200 searches?
Found to have been details belonging to the vehicle that a man that Becky was now dating, well, that was his vehicle. And it doesn't stop there, because those searches were made on Tim's computer on Valentine's Day, right after the camera on the Hyman's property had captured someone going up Becky's driveway. The car in question had been parked in her driveway, and so it was easy to connect the dots. Tim had gone to Becky's house, gotten the vehicle's information, biked back, and then did some research with the information that he collected. He had also done other online searches, such as how to make a homemade pistol silencer, how to open my door with a crowbar, and how to clean gunpowder off your hands. And like I said, he also had a burner account. Investigators found that he had a fake Facebook profile going by John Smith, and he had used that account to look at a bike that had been on sale on Facebook, a blue Schwinn bike that had no reflectors on the wheels. That bike was believed to be the same one that investigators found abandoned a few miles from his.
Your own phone and laptop gave you away. You doing all this searching. If you need to search up all this shit, maybe you shouldn't be committing a crime. You asking Google how to commit a crime like that's not gonna bite you in the ass. Them detectives were detectiving? On God. You gotta search up how to do this, how to do that. If you gotta learn all of this and then next week, maybe you should not be committing that crime.
His address and the same one on CCTV footage. All that put together, you can probably see how he had tried to hide his tracks up until that point. And even more interesting is that he was the one who called Becky's dad after she failed to pick the kids up from school. So yeah, he called her dad knowing that she would find her lifeless body. Now, so far in this case, one detail that I think carries quite some weight and that you should pay attention to is how Sarah described the couple as having a combative history. I'm gonna get into that a little bit more, but first, how did Tim's arrest even go? Well, it was pretty uneventful, really. When the search warrant was executed on his house, he was temporarily detained, being taken to a relative's house as the search went on, and then later released. There was no fuss in this detention, as sources indicate that he was, quote, very cooperative with the officers, even handing over his keys to the home and his car. The police statement on the search also reflected the same, with part of it saying there were no injuries reported during the service of the warrant. As part of the warrant service, an individual was temporarily detained in the 2000 block of Hampshire and released. He was then actually arrested 2 weeks later. This happened on the morning of March 13th, 2023, a Monday, and on the following day, he was arraigned in court and charged with killing his wife in a home invasion. This was his first appearance in court, and it too was uneventful, as he didn't even know.
You know what's so crazy? Now your kids don't have both parents. Your kids have to grow up without both parents. Like, yeah, like, people don't think you want to be, you're such a good dad, and you want to be this great dad and this great father figure. You doing something stupid, put your children's, like, future at jeopardy. Like, that's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Enter a plea. That means he didn't get to admit or deny being guilty, although he did invoke his right to a speedy trial, forcing the case to be tried within 90 days of his arrest. Subsequent hearings thus moved fast, and even more revealed chilling details about their marriage and what Becky had to endure. And I believe this is a right point to get into their combative history. So we've already learned that Becky's sister, Sarah Riley, was the one who hinted to detectives about the confrontations that had been going on between the couple. However, she didn't stop there, as she was a witness in court during the murder trial. In her testimony, described by news articles as chilling, she revealed that Becky had confided in her about fearing Tim amidst their messy divorce and custody battle. In a text message, she told Sarah, "If something ever happens to me, make sure the number one person of interest is Tim. She added, I am putting this in writing that I am fearful he will somehow harm me, come after me, or will try to do something that takes me away from the kids or the kids away from me. Becky insisted to her sister that Tim had already lied on several occasions and tried to paint himself as the victim of Becky's actions, while it was, quote, absolutely the other way around. In addition to that, he had also taken away her gun and ammunition and refused to give them back. In the same proceedings, it was also revealed that Becky had also expressed her fear of Tim to a friend as they exchanged texts. She told the friend that a coworker she knew had gotten murdered by an ex and that she, quote, literally had a panic attack, end quote, when she thought of what Tim might do to her. Her specific words being, I am scared of what he might do in his erratic behavior. All this evidence, as I'm about to show you, points to a deeply troubled relationship, and it is thus no wonder that the prosecution tried to frame the case as a result of domestic violence, something which the defense completely refuted. It seems Tim had a lack of support for Becky's decisions, or rather his attempts at controlling her. This was also something revealed by her sister, Sarah, who, while speaking to 48 Hours, an investigative series by CBS, explained that sometime in Becky's marriage, Tim changed and became progressively more manipulative and controlling. The couple had apparently had a great first 5 years of marriage and had even previously been trouble-free in their dating relationship, which went back to their days as students at Quincy University where they met. The strain apparently came in when Becky decided to go back to nursing school, a decision that Tim just didn't support, terming his objection as a concern for her well-being. Becky was, however, bent on having a career in nursing, and she did eventually get there, as at the time of her death, she was an ER nurse at Blessing Hospital. Her friend, Shannon Zanger, also in an interview,
nigga didn't want it, bro. What's wrong with nursing? Nothing. Nigga didn't, listen. A lot of niggas want control, full control over a woman. A lot. And that control starts with finances. If she has a career and she has her own money to be able to do what she wants with her funds, that's like, not having your finances controls a lot of your life. So when she was like, all right, I want to, get a decent job, have my finances, nigga feels the control over the relationship slipping away. I don't know what he did, but nurses make a lot of money. If she was even making more than him, that's more of a reason for control to be gone. Nurses make bank. If she started making more than that nigga, it was up. Especially if you're a terrible person. Alright, bro.
Interview with CBS revealed that Becky had felt like she was shouldering most of the load around the house, something which was also pointed out by Sarah. It turns out that Tim not only didn't support her shift into nursing, but also never increased his time spent with their boys. His perspective, though, remained that nursing would stress her, affecting her well-being. Also, I personally found this particularly interesting, but it was actually Tim who filed for the divorce. The filing took place in February of 2021, and according to him, the reason was that
So why the fuck? That doesn't, bro. What?
Becky, since taking on nursing, was struggling with patience and stress a lot, particularly on things concerning the kids. He described this as a shift in her personality that created conflict between them. However, that version of events was refuted by Sarah, who explained that Tim was struggling with control, and that was also his reason for wanting to leave.
Struggling with control, chat. I'm telling you, it starts with the finance. It's like little shit. But the main thing is finances. If you can't control how a bitch spend her money, you can't control her for real. And niggas want control over women. That's bro, this shit is crazy to me.
Clearly, there was contention as to what triggered the divorce, but what is sure is that the marriage wasn't going good. For instance, the court documents revealed that they had been fighting over everything and anything. They didn't agree when it came to money, their marital home, which Becky lived in at the time, and the custody of the kids. In fact, just a few months leading to the divorce, they both had filed restraining orders on each other. First, it was Tim who filed for an order of protection against Becky, citing that she stalked and harassed him. In the filing, he also brought up an incident where he claimed she had become combative at a parent-teacher night following a disagreement. He had a cell phone video as proof. The judge, however, never granted the order. Then, Becky filed her own order of protection against Tim. She petitioned the court by alleging that Tim had, quote, entered her residence without permission, end quote. She also brought up an argument that Tim had, on several occasions, lied about their interactions. Still, the court denied the order, but the judge ultimately ordered that the two stay away from each other's houses unless they were exchanging the kids. That was also the point when the judge ordered Tim to return returned Becky's firearm and ammunition. And going back to Becky's version of events, there was a lot of strange behavior by Tim that was revealed in her conversations to other people. For instance, there was a text to one friend saying, "He has screamed in my face, he shoved me in front of the kids, and has thrown things across the room." And then a text to a different friend saying, "I truly believe Tim has serious mental health problems, and he is becoming more vengeful and unpredictable." Though amidst all this, Tim maintained that it was Becky who was in the wrong. He claimed that she had lied to people that he was an alcoholic and had an affair because she was angry that he filed for divorce. Now, we'll come back to the he said, she said tussle that also involved their lawyers. But first, what was it about Tim's appearance on Family Feud that brought so much attention to the case? Well, obviously, someone appearing on a popular TV show or YouTube video and then doing an action like murdering somebody is always going to get people interested. It just is. But second, it's what he said on the show. He made a joke about the quote biggest wedding mistake, and he said that that was saying "I do." This appearance was in an episode recorded in the fall of 2019 and aired in the spring of 2020 on ABC.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do.
Oh, wow.
Not my mistake. I love my wife. I'm gonna get in trouble for that, aren't I?
And it's pretty easy to see why this was brought up in the context of his murder case. Although, to be fair, the joke had pretty much nothing to do with the murder case. Investigators even said that themselves. It's just a pretty eerie thing to look back on considering what happened in the future. Yeah, in the clip, the audience laughs and gasps, and Steve gives him a blank stare. Tim quickly sets things straight, saying, "Not my mistake, not my mistake, I love my wife." He was sort of explaining that he wasn't talking about himself in the response. Although he soon realizes his futile attempt at correcting things and says, "I'm gonna get in trouble for what I said, aren't I?" Steve Harvey then goes on to caution him that the only way that joke would be worth it is if it got him higher on the scoreboard. Now, Tim had appeared on the show with his mother, brothers, and father, and one more interesting thing that people picked up on was his change in appearance over the years. In the show, he had this groomed short hairstyle and a friendly poise, which was quite different from his mugshot, where he has long hair. Becky's family, according to
yeah, he was losing it, bro. He was losing it, bro. Look. Yeah.
Sarah had also noticed a change in appearance, terming it as deteriorating, and going hand in hand with the deterioration of his mental state as the divorce took its course. Anyway, going back to the murder, let's focus on the contentious gun for a bit, as that's an interesting part of the story. So, as I mentioned, Tim has taken a 9mm handgun from Becky, or more like got gifted by Becky, but then refused to return it when she asked for it. And to be clear, he had refused to return both the gun and ammunition. When the judge ordered the two to stay away from each other's residences, the judge also ordered for Tim to return the gun and the ammunition. What's interesting is that he never did, and what's even more interesting is that Becky was killed by a 9mm gun. According to Sarah, Tim was into recreational shooting, which I guess is why he had been gifted the gun, but Becky wanted the gun back because it was in her name. In the interview with 48 Hours, Tim, however, insisted he had not seen the gun in 3 years and did not have it. As you will later see, there's a chance, and the prosecution thought so as well, Tim still had the gun and used it in the murder. Anyway, away from the gun, it could seem that a lot of evidence was stacked against Tim at this point, but his lawyer, Casey Schnock, dismissed all of it as circumstantial hearsay. She argued that just because Tim and Becky had disagreed over things during the divorce proceedings, it didn't mean that he killed her. She said that even the messages that Becky had sent to her friends were nothing more than, quote, girl talk, as they were never backed by any hard evidence of physical violence. The prosecutors, Josh Jones and Laura Keck, did however insist there was a presence of emotional abuse clear in his text to her. Laura Keck, for example, argued that the text clearly indicated that he wanted control and power. Now, I should add here that there are bits and pieces of evidence that were contested by both sides in attempts to shift the juries. For example, while Schnock, Tim's lawyer, supported his alibi for the time of the murder, the prosecutors thought the opposite. The alibi was that Tim had been home with their kids, as Becky had asked him to extend his stay with them as she wasn't feeling well. Schnock thought of this as a normal interaction of people getting divorced, but the prosecution insisted that it was an opening where a predator saw weakness in its prey and pounced. The prosecution's perspective was that Tim had just the right circumstances to strike while maintaining innocence. This view was also supported by the fact that the intruder broke in through one of the kids' bedrooms on the second story. There was no way a random stranger would have come in, gone past 3 windows that were equally possible entry points, and just happened to choose a window to a little boy's bedroom that wasn't there that night. Schnock, though, insisted that nothing about that mode of entry tied Tim to the crime, because even after investigators seized all pair of Tim's athletic shoes, none of them were a match to the partial shoe print found at the scene, and even the patio chair that was used by the intruder to climb.
Maybe he threw the chair out just like he tried to throw out the bike. Like, what? What are we talking about?
Up to the second story did not have Tim's DNA. Also, gloves from Tim's car and the bike that was found a few blocks from his house didn't have his DNA. Schnock also added that the figure in the camera was not Tim, or rather, no one could point out without absolutely certainty that it was him. And it wasn't known for sure that the bike that was found near his address was the one picked up by cameras the night before the murder. Now, while all this back and forth made it seem like Tim had a good defense, the prosecutors had a pretty strong case against him with even stronger evidence. First, there were odd pieces of plastic bags found.
How much longer am I streaming? Not sure.
Around Becky's body. These were determined to be shreds of ALDI grocery bags, the same types of bags that had been found in Tim's house in stacks. So the argument was that he had fired through an ALDI bag in order to muffle the sound of the gunshot, trying to create a homemade suppressor. DNA on the pieces showed that it was very likely that Tim was a contributor, and this was bundled with the fact that DNA from Becky's fingernails could also not exclude him. Then there was the fact that Becky was killed just a week before their divorce proceedings went to trial. According to the prosecution, it turns out that Becky was trying to gather witnesses against Tim's father, Ray, because she didn't want their 3 children to be left with him unsupervised. This had apparently created unease in Tim because it would have unearthed information that he never wanted to come out. It was being alleged that Ray had a, quote, history of perversion and abusing minor children, end quote. Years earlier, although...
Bro, how your dad has a history of this shit, and you actually want your kids around your father? Bro, I'm sorry, bro. If I know my father has a history of that shit, I'm keeping my kids as far away as possible. I don't give a fuck, grandfather or not. That nigga freaky as hell.
Though the alleged victims were not Becky's children. The judge denied the order of prosecution against Ray, and Ray's lawyer doubled down by stating that he vehemently denied the claims, and that his client had never been charged with any criminal offense in the line of those allegations. However, although none of that went the way Becky wanted, the prosecution further argued that it had meant Tim was losing control and he didn't like it. Added to the fact that before anyone knew Becky was dead, except her killer of course, Tim had brought a kid's basketball hoop to his dad's house. Josh Jones, one of the prosecutors, said that the hoop, was something he did because he knew Becky wasn't going to be a problem anymore. Now, away from that, the prosecution's argument about loss of control by Tim also went back to the Valentine's night incident that we talked about that was caught on the CCTV footage. According to them, it was odd to search for a VIN number and license plate more than 200 times at 1:10 in the morning. That simply showed that Tim had another obsession with Becky, and when he realized that she was spending Valentine's with another person, he must have felt like he wasn't in control anymore. Tim, though, said that he didn't care about the relationship. Lastly, the prosecution.
So why are you searching up 200 times? If you didn't care, why did you search that number? Why did you search it up 200 times?
Prosecutors also brought up the shell casings. We already started by pointing out that 8 shell casings were found at the scene of the crime, and also stated that in his basement, 54 shell casings were found. The interesting bit is that 27 of those 54 were established to have been fired from the gun that was used in the murder. Pretty damning, but then Tim's lawyers still maintained that, like everything else prone to human error, the expert analysis on the casings might have been wrong. And this did actually help because in the trial, which kicked off on May 23rd, 2023, when it came to the jury's decision, one juror remained undecided. However, 4 hours later, after further deliberations, the decision was reached that Tim was guilty of first-degree murder. The 48 Hours documentary that I've been talking about actually interviewed Tim after the conviction. This was as he was awaiting his sentencing. What did he have to say for himself? Well, he couldn't believe the position he was in. For instance, he said, "It's felt like I'm watching somebody else's life from the outside. Like, it can't be me. But the only thing I can do right now is what we're doing." And what exactly were they doing? Well, filing an appeal. This was the last hope for him to acquit himself. His lawyer Schnock said that she was disappointed but not surprised by Judge Robert Adrian's decision. She explained, "The judge didn't do anything that I wasn't expecting him to do." Jones, one of the defense attorneys, didn't let up though. She insisted that in her 22 years of experience, she had never seen such a premeditated and thought out murder. He said that Tim had researched the murder, planned it, and shot his wife 14 times, a crime that would be deserving of life in prison. So Tim got sentenced to 3 natural life sentences merged into one. That means he would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Also, while the judge refused a petition by the media to unseal the case documents, it's pretty clear from the impact statements how Becky's family viewed Tim. Sarah, for example, reminded him that his crime would forever impact the future of his children who were already suffering. She told him that he probably should have Googled childhood PTSD amidst his other internet searches of homemade silencers and VIN numbers. Sarah's message to the world was also pretty clear. If someone reaches out stating they're in danger, make an active active effort to make sure they're safe. Now, following Tim's arrest, the 3 children were placed in custody of Becky's parents. Sarah then went on to open a GoFundMe page to help cater for funeral expenses, as well as future expenses of the boys. Another goal of the fundraiser was to establish a scholarship fund under Becky's name, with that maybe being a way to emphasize her generosity and compassion, both part of the attributes mentioned about her on the fundraiser page. Anyway, as of making this video, the GoFundMe was at $125,000, with the goal of $250,000. That GoFundMe page also helped identify where Tim is at now, post-sentencing. As in the updates, it states that he had been transferred from Adams County Jail to Graham Correctional in Hillsborough, Illinois, where he would serve his sentence. For the first 30 days, he would not be allowed to make calls, receive messages, or even have visitors. The page also states that as of August 23rd, 2023, the 2 families were, quote, still embroiled in legal processes and battles for the security and best interests of Becky's sons. Overall, this remains one of the saddest murder cases involving a married couple, not only due to its gruesome nature
I'm sorry,
of execution.
bro. I'm sorry, bro. But, bro, my father killed my mother. Why would I want to go with his parents? Why would I send him with his parents? Hell no, hell no, hell no.
But also the kind of trail it left behind. Becky's family statements after the ruling and Becky's obituary particularly speak on that last part. Part of the statement talks about how the boys, aged 12, 10, and 5 years old, were robbed of a loving, devoted mother and would have to face life with the truth that their father murdered their mother. Elsewhere, Becky's obituary, without going too much into it, revealed how dedicated she was to both her profession and the general services of others. She had, for instance, at one point been nominated for the International Daisy Award, which honors exceptional care given by extraordinary nurses. She was also a volunteer at her kids' school and a local nonprofit dealing in animal rescue. But yeah, rest in peace to Becky.
Holy shit, man.
Alright guys, that was it for this video. If you enjoyed the way I presented the story, it would be nice if you could leave a like. If you're new to the channel, it would be nice if you could subscribe. This video was slightly different. I know I've been introducing more single topics rather than the list videos I usually make. This was another single topic video, so let me know if you guys like the single topics. It seems a lot of people like it, though my bread and butter really is the list type of videos, but I don't mind indulging in these once in a while, and I do want to keep making more of them. So if you have any interesting cases you'd like me to cover, personally I like covering internet related stuff. Like for example, this was somehow tied to Family Feud, so anything pop culture related, leave it down in the comments if you want me to cover it. But yeah, that's basically it. Go stream Honey. It's my best song out so far. I make music, in case you guys didn't know. I'm not gonna plug too hard, but yeah, you can go stream Honey on all streaming services, and I will see you guys next time.
Yep. Hey, WVid, man. WVid, that was crazy, bro. Bro, if they send them kids with the dad's parents, they done failed them kids, bro. They done failed them kids if they send them kids with the dad's parents. But shout out to Tub, man. W video, bro.